Hi, Simon. Hi, Sarah. It's great to be here as we get ready for the conference. And our second culture question, Simon, for you is, do schools have a culture?
And we could do this very simply and finish this video now in about 8 seconds, which I think the answer is yes. There is no question that all organisations have a culture, and therefore schools are no different. So yes, schools have a culture. But I think more than that, schools have many different cultures. They will have subcultures within them. So we mentioned this in the last video, that there could be departmental cultures. An interesting one is corridor cultures. So people that work in the same local part of the school. I work in an international school where the recruitment tends to be a little bit more than it is possibly in a state setting, and a national setting. And therefore we also have cohorts, so people that have joined at the different times. So those are different ways in which people can bind together. And again, if you look at the definition of culture as this sort of norms and beliefs that people have in common, that's often determined by their own experience. So yes, schools have a culture. The bit that fascinates me is the extent to which I don't think this is necessarily recognized. And certainly, I mean, I've been a head teacher for 10 years now, and it wasn't something that I recognized for the first 6-7 years of that time. We worked individually at different things, all important: teaching and learning, assessment, safeguarding, etc. But for me, the culture is the bit that binds it all together. And the real power in this is that actually, I believe if you get the culture right, if you try really hard to intentionally influence the culture, it provides a narrative, it provides that common understanding, so that all of those different elements become much more joined, much more clearly understood. I once worked in, the school I'm working in now, when I first got here, I asked the senior leadership, what did they feel was missing? And one of the senior leaders said, well, everyone's doing different things. And actually that's about leadership, but it's also about culture. Everyone understanding not just where they're going, but why they're going. And I think sometimes we make a mistake in education, which is that that's understood. But as always, why should it be understood? So yeah, all schools have cultures, many cultures. For me, the challenge is to direct those and lead those cultures.
Yeah, I think that question of how does everybody know what the culture is a really interesting question. And, I suppose linked to that, one of the things I often think about is the culture visible when no one's in the school? Do you need people to be there to get a sense of what the culture is?
Like all schools, we do parent tours and often talk to parents at the end of it. Very few parents actually will say what they saw. Very few parents will talk about what they heard. But parents will often talk about how it felt. And I think that's the nebulous bit. But the bit about, and you're absolutely right in the culture, I think we make an assumption that people will understand. Well, you should understand what we're trying to achieve. You should understand the reasons why. In my weaker moments of a teacher, I would sort of presume that of the students. Well, I've explained it, but why? Why should they? And we have to make it explicit. But not only that, and there are each classroom has a culture as well. If we don't make those assumptions, if we help to make it far more explicit, I think it can become so much more powerful.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that notion of, kind of being explicit about things is key, because when we think about learning, which is, the main business of schools in many respects, we're talking a lot about visible learning, visible thinking. Why wouldn't we talk about making the culture visible and, not having the game in a school of guess what the culture is, which is really challenging for people.
There was if you think about leadership and management as a model, I think sort of 30, 40 years ago, it really was the case of, senior managers and senior leaders instructing, so very much top down, you do this, you do this, you do this. And I think we've completely changed that to a much more open culture in schools where people are unable to express their views. But this is a logical next step in terms of school improvement, is that we're engaging people and giving them the understanding of why it is. We're explaining our culture.